Hello and welcome to our career interview with Dr. Christopher Paolino. Joining me today for this interview is Greenville student Kris. Dr. Paolino, if you could start by telling us what your exact profession is and a little bit about the journey that you've taken to get to where you are today.
Yep. So I am an infectious disease physician. My journey has kind of taken me all over the place. So initially went to undergraduate up in coastal Maine, and then came back to New York to do my medical school in Buffalo. And during my first year of medical school, I decided to join the military through the Health Professions Scholarship Program. Basically got my medical school paid for, and then I had a commitment to the Army for 4 years. While I was in training in the Army in Washington, D.C. at Walter Reed, I decided, which I was already kind of leaning towards, to go into infectious diseases. So I did a 3-year internal medicine residency, included an internship, and then started my infectious disease fellowship, which in the military is a 3-year fellowship. Some of the civilian sites, it's only 2 years. So that third year, I actually got my master's in tropical medicine and hygiene and kind of focused on research. And then after that, I went into clinical research through the Army because, the Army generally kind of tells you, where you're going to be. And they said you can either do research or you can do research. And so it was kind of chosen for me that I was going to go into clinical research at that point. I was at the Walter Reed Army Institute of Research for just over 5 years. And then now I moved back home to New York. I'm in Syracuse at this point at Upstate Medical Center. And I'm one of the assistant professors for medicine in the infectious disease division. And I'm the director for clinical research for our global health group.
That's an impressive journey that you've had so far. Thanks for sharing. So because you've had a variety of positions in there, in your current position, talk to us about what a typical day looks like. And maybe there isn't any one typical day, but walk us through a day.
Yeah, typical is tough. As a clinician, I have 2 half days of clinic a week, sometimes more. Right now I'm on inpatient clinical service. So I'm rounding in 2 different hospitals here in Syracuse, seeing patients. When I'm not on clinical rounds covering a hospital, I spend a lot of my time in the clinical research unit, or our clinical research clinic that we have. And we run clinical trials to include things like the current Pfizer vaccine for COVID, as well as other vaccine clinical trials and therapeutics. I'm going to be starting a new drug therapeutic, hopefully this week, for staph bacteremia, which is a bloodstream infection with a staph organism. And, I've been doing clinical trials now for, since 2011. So 10 years? And it's something I never thought I was going to enjoy, but it kind of breaks up the monotony that some doctors sometimes suffer from when you're doing the same thing every day. So it creates a nice variety for me.
Yeah, and you had mentioned that you didn't know if you would enjoy it or not, which moves on to our next question. What do you love most about your job?
So I love infectious diseases in general because everything is it's not cookie cutter for the most part. It's not going to be the same thing every single day. You're going to have something that's going to make you scratch your head at least once or twice in a week when you're on clinical service. I also really like the clinical trials component. That was the part I wasn't sure I was ever going to really enjoy. And there's just something about being on the front lines and doing things that potentially are going to make a difference for a very large group of people. So when we had the opportunity to participate in the Pfizer vaccine study here at SUNY Upstate, obviously we jumped right on that. And it was really nice to be able to kind of see how people were responding to the vaccine and how they were doing in general. Sorry, did you lose me for a second? Somebody tried calling me. Anyway, I enjoy being on the front lines. I got to work on the Ebola vaccine study back in 2014, 2015, and we were the first clinic to enroll a human subject in the phase 1 study. So being on the front lines is always kind of cool.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. What kind of skills do you need for your job? This is probably a long question, considering what you do, but like soft skills, communication, training, skills like that. Like, what is it?
So, I think some of the skills you mentioned are really important. I think communication is probably, paramount, really regardless of what you're doing, whether it's medicine or other things. I think poor communicators generally don't thrive. So I think being able to talk to colleagues in my role and make sure that we can kind of bridge any gaps that there may be in terms of the approach to patients is really helpful. I feel like one of the things that I've realized over the years that's been really helpful in getting me to where I am now is, people talk about grit as a skill. I don't know if it's really a learned skill as much, or if it's just something that you have, or you're kind of, you develop as a younger kid. But I've always worked really hard. My father was a floor installer, and he worked his tail off on a daily basis. And I saw what that was like, and I've kind of adopted that into my everyday kind of profession. So, I think working hard and communication are two of the biggest things. And then I think for me, and I hopefully for most doctors, that kind of lust to learn, right, and be a lifelong learner is really important as well. You can't just say, all right, I know everything, I'm done, because you're going to do that, and then something like coronavirus is going to hit, and it's going to throw everything on its head.
So based on your profession and the past year, I'm guessing you could probably answer the next question for about 5 hours, but I'll ask it. What are some challenges that you've faced, whether it's recently or just challenges over the course of your career? What are some challenges you've faced but overcome?
I think you kind of alluded to the pandemic, and that's something that I don't think anybody's ever really going to get used to. My 8-year-old asked me what my first pandemic was like, and I was like, "You're looking at it, buddy." So this kind of unexpected event. This is, I tell people all the time, this is what scares infectious disease physicians. When Ebola was coming out, everybody was like, "Oh, this must be terrifying. You must be staying up all night with these Ebola cases potentially coming to the United States." And I've said all along, respiratory viral illnesses are the things I worry about the most, just because they're so contagious and they can do exactly what we've seen. So I think the challenges of working in a pandemic situation has been a unique kind of a finding. I think that's probably the biggest one that comes to my mind at the moment.
Yeah, COVID's been a mess. What kind of advice do you have for students who possibly want to pursue this profession?
I think from the very beginning, what you really want to do is actually figure out if this fits for you. And it seems like a very simple thing to say, but a lot of people, they start to go into like the medical field, and they've done very little shadowing, or they're like, "Oh, I want to be a doctor." And then they go and they shadow a doctor, and they're just like, "I can't handle that. I can't handle, seeing blood," or whatever it may be. So I think shadowing and getting experience and actually kind of learning who you are and whether or not this is something that appeals to you. And in addition to the shadowing experience, I did a lot of reading when I was in high school. In fact, when I was in AP Bio my senior year, I convinced my professor to not have me take any more exams the rest of the year. Partly because I thought they were very easy in general, and secondly, I had more interests in infectious diseases at that time. So I told her I would write her a 40-page term paper on emerging infectious diseases. And she laughed about it. And then I delivered at the end of the year, and I walked out of the final not taking it. And she was like, "Oh, okay." So, I just really enjoyed reading about that stuff. And you'll find whether or not it's something that's appealing to you. If you can't read about what you want to do for the rest of your life, it's probably not going to be a great fit, because you want to really enjoy what you're doing.
So were there any classes though that you took in high school or middle school that connect to your job now, besides the ones that are possibly required?
You know, I think the biology and the science courses were probably the biggest ones. Biology is probably the one that fit in most with what I do now. Most of the stuff that you're going to get when you get to this profession, you're going to learn when you're in either undergrad or, you know, more obviously in medical school. So, you know, I think, like I said, you know, read about things, you know, learn about the biology, especially the microbiology aspect of things, if that's even an offered class in high school. And then when you get into undergrad, like I took things that were really kind of setting me up for medical school. So I took anatomy and physiology and pathophysiology as an undergrad. You know, I did, you know, parasitology as an undergrad, you know, things that most people, you know, may not think to take. You know, I kind of jumped at them, and actually, you know, I knew a lot of stuff before I even hit medical school because of some of those undergrad courses.
Well, we're coming to the end of our time for today, Dr. Paolino, but is there anything else that you would like to share for students who will be watching this, or other words of wisdom? You've had quite a few already, but just an opportunity, anything else you'd like to share?
You know, I think, you know, if this is something that people are interested in doing, and they've done the shadowing, they've kind of read up on the topics that they may be interested in, if this is really something that they want, you know, it's just about hard work at the end of the day. You know, when you get into medical school, I tell people, you know, that's probably the hardest part about this, is getting in. And then once you're in, it's just about putting the time and effort into you know, becoming the physician or the healthcare provider that you want to be. You know, I think you can say that for pretty much any profession. You know, if you don't work hard, you're probably not going to succeed. And that's what I've seen in my career.
Great. Well, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it. The nugget that I'm going to take away from this is, if you can't read about what you want to do for the rest of your life, you should reconsider. I think that's a great piece of advice. If you're going to be passionate about something, you should be able to read about it. So thanks for your words of wisdom and for joining us today.
Yep. Thank you.